All right, we are here with Chris Amburn of New Experience Workshop Games, and just real quick, how we met, Chris, was at just a board game meetup, right, in San
Yeah.
Marcos.
Yep. San Marcos Board Game Group. A lot of great people there.
And the thing that I was just kind of playing games, whatever, and at this point I had been making games for a while, but I hadn't published one. And then Chris walked in with a game that you had just kickstarted, and I was like, "Hey, this is gonna be my new best friend." So I was like, "Hey, what's that game you have?" And then we started talking, and come to find out, you had just kickstarted Shootout was the game you had just kickstarted.
Yeah. When we moved to San Marcos, Shootout was my first title. It was my We had it out and it was available um,
I just
from
thought
sorry from January on that year.
that's cool, and I can't remember exactly when we met. It was probably in the fall, so it might
Yeah,
have been
yeah,
out for a while.
yeah. Either late summer, early fall, but yeah. I mean, it was still new and it was big to us because we had been working on that I'd been working on that for years. I had the idea back in college and I had tinkered with it, and then finally like sat down and put in all the work to get it done.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I remember because we had both had some Magic background. You played some Magic the Gathering, and I was a competitive card game player. Not so much competitive in Magic, but I liked it for that reason. And you were like, "This is a great game. I made this game because when we would play Magic, there was like some awkward 10 minutes to kill here and there, or waiting to set up. And you're like, this is a game where you can kill 10 minutes while you wait to play another game of Magic."
Yeah. It was meant to, like, the whole goal was to have as rewarding a rewarding game with fun decisions with basically zero investment. Like, this game doesn't ask anything of you. You don't have to strategize. You don't have to think that hard. You can if you want to, and it'll help you win. But it's just a game. It's a game to play to enjoy company while you're either waiting for something else, or you're waiting for a pizza, while you're waiting between rounds at a tournament, like that kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah, and I think
To
it
hang.
does that really well. That and its older brother, or yeah, older brother, younger
Successor.
brother, Showdown, which I have right here. I'll show the camera here.
Awesome.
Oh,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
I,
So I still have
it's,
my copy right here. Um, so let's real quick. You've published, you've manufactured. Since this is kind of the overall topic is manufacturing and distribution, which
mhm.
I'm trying to learn about because I've made games for 8 9 years, but I've never actually published one. So I don't. I'm pretty new to the whole manufacturing, getting it mass printed, and then distribution, sending it everywhere. So real quick, you've manufactured and distributed 3 games. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I would say I'm still sort of a novice when it comes to distribution because I've gotten a few deals here and there, but nothing on like a wide mass market scale. But manufacturing, yes, we had Shootout, Palette Swap, which was a very small run, and then Showdown, which was a lot more popular successor to Shootout.
And when you say small run, let's talk about really quick how many games of each of those 3 you've
Right,
made.
with Shootout, with a lot of manufacturers, their minimum quantity is either going to be 500 or 1,000, and that depends on the manufacturer, and it also depends on how big your game is.
Okay.
Um, so for
So
with you know
would a larger game be less required usually?
generally a larger game would be more because
Ah,
so much goes into it. It's just a matter of like volume, like
and the setup
just
costs are more expensive for the printers, probably.
yeah. I mean, it depends on what you want. Like boards are more expensive than cards. Like that's why you have games with cards instead of tiles or whatever, because it's just a matter of cost. And then anything plastic is going to be incredibly expensive. And you might wonder because some games, like a lot of mass market games, like Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, are really great examples. Very cheap games with lots of great components, but the cost is all the mold. So for 1,000 copies of the plastic is hugely expensive. Where if you're making 20,000 copies, not so much.
So when you're talking about a mold, how is that actually made? So like you have a 3D sculptor make a mold and then you send that to the manufacturer. It
Well,
is
you have a 3D sculptor sculpt the model for you. So they'll sculpt what the miniature will look like. And we did this for On Their Merry Way. which hasn't been printed yet. But they'll make the model, and then you send the model to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer's team will make the mold, and then on their end.
So this is just a digital 3D model that they make on whatever software.
Right. Yep.
Cool.
There are probably some technical aspects about it I'm not 100% versed in, but yeah, it's just a general 3D sculpted volume shape.
Did your 3D modeler pretty much know all of the nuances, like what file type and all that needed to be sent? Yeah. Like, because that's what I like. I need a 3D model to be sent. I don't really know anything else.
With 3D printing these days, it's a lot more commonplace. It's a lot more common knowledge, I think. So, what works for, they'll be able to set up the normal model and then send it to you in a format that you can just print right there on your 3D printer. For the most part.
That's cool. And do you have a 3D printer?
I do. It's been amazing for prototyping.
Really? I might have to look into one when I make my first board game prototype. I pretty much just make card games mainly because of that, like the logistics that you mentioned. I just don't really know about them, and I like card games anyway, so I'm like, I just might as well make a card game first. And I think that's what most game designers do, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was the idea with Shootout too. That was the plan from day one: was make a small card game, get it out
your feet
there,
wet.
build a presence. Yeah, understand the process on a project that's not going to destroy us with either the time commitment or the cost of it.
That makes sense.
And then work up to bigger and better things. I think the problem is we went straight from card game to cool big box board game with miniatures and everything, and we skipped some in between steps there, I think. So we're kind of taking a couple steps back to we're going to be focusing on sort of middleweight as far as component speaking games.
And just to catch the audience up, like, so you had two, Showdown and Shootout were your first two, and they were both purely card games in a box, just like this.
Palette Swap came out in between them.
Oh, did it?
Palette Swap was an experimental title. We did 100 copies only, which we printed. We had the boxes were printed, the cards were printed, and we ordered cubes directly from China. And we put boxes, cubes, cards, and rule books that we assembled ourselves into the box, and that was Palette Swap. So
it was Shootout, Palette Swap, and then Showdown. And then you said you assembled them yourself. So where did all of the pieces come from? You said the pieces came from China. What else did you get from other places?
Well, we got cards, square cards specifically from Make Playing Cards.
And that's U.S. based?
Yep.
I'm asking because let's see. I had a question on Facebook from Trevor, and he asked if it's possible to do a print run in the U.S. and distribute through normal distribution channels and still come out ahead, or would it cost an arm and a leg? So
it's
that's
basically not possible.
Okay, that's kind of what I've heard.
Well, because the thing is, we printed we got the cubes from China, but let's just say we got something else locally. With the cubes, the box, and the cards for this game, it was about $10 per unit. Whereas if we had gotten that game from China, it would have been half that, even with the same quantity, probably. Well, not with the same quantity. I would have to get more quantity. So, if you're only going for a small quantity, or if you're getting if your game was somehow heavier to ship than but easy to make, then you could potentially find some way to do it in the U.S. if it was made out of wooden blocks or something. But I think for the most part, any kind of standard board game components are going to be
That makes sense. So in general, Trevor, like the print run, if it's going to be 500 or more, like any minimum print run from China, if you can get it in China, you should probably do it in China for a cost standpoint.
Because I've done a lot of comparison, like U.S. printing, because without the shipping, added shipping, but the shipping really doesn't add that much.
Really? That's good to know.
Right. So if I was to 500 copies of Showdown, if I got them today, would be $285 to ship them, which is a little more than 50 cents a copy.
Interesting. And so, but if you're doing a print run, Trevor, back to your question, if you're doing a print run less than 500, where Chinese manufacturers won't do it because it's too low of a volume, then it is possible to do it. You just won't You just shouldn't do it in expectation to make money, I guess.
Yeah, the key part of that I was wanted to address was the distribution part. Like for a normal distribution channel, because you're always going to be going at 40 to 50% of the cost of the game. So if Palette Swap was a $25 game, and I put in, if I put that on normal distribution, it would be $10 to $12, meaning I would either break even or just barely make anything, not even enough to cover like the time it takes to put those copies together. If I did
Interesting.
through distribution instead of through like direct sales.
So you're saying, sorry, just this is interesting to me. So you're saying, in general, let me get my trusty notepad out here. In general, if your game costs $25 and you sell, say, 200 of those 500 games to distributors, they're going to buy each game for on average 40 to 50% of that, which is like, $12 or whatever. Is that?
Yep, yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yep, it's all about volume with those guys and reaching a broader audience.
And so the manufacturers would ship those straight to the distributors. You'd set that up. Is that in the idea?
It really depends on where you're at. Like big name companies are definitely doing it that way. They're gonna have it. They're gonna have their shipments broken up. Some for the Kickstarter, some for the distributors, all that stuff. But probably at an early level, you're gonna get all that shipped to your house and then kind of figure out what to do with it after that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, not cool, but like this stuff's fascinating. Just trying to figure out the logistics.
To just open up a closet and be like, I just have a million board games that just happen to be the same one.
It's funny. Like I was making prototypes a week or two ago, and I just out of the blue was like, I was playtesting with my mom, and my mom's a math teacher, and I was like, Mom, I've always wondered how much space 500 games takes up. So we kind of got out a box and started doing measurements in our living room, and I was like, wow, it takes up a lot of room.
Yeah. Yeah, on their merry way, we were really concerned about that. It's something we still haven't realized yet, but we're probably going to put in as small a box as possible. The reason that games come in such big boxes is just so they have shelf presence, anyways.
Interesting.
As a small company, you really have a lot more things you need to worry about than plus 10% to your shelf presence stat.
Yeah, so for small time publishers like us, or indie, solo publishers is maybe what I would call myself if I get to that point. So we would the saving the money on the box size is much more important than having that shelf presence, and mainly because we're not in general going to be on the shelves of a game store if we're doing really small print runs. Is that usually the thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, you're probably going to, if you have some local stores, they'll probably stock you. We have some great store in Springfield that we ship games to. We have a few with an online distributor, and we dipped our toe into selling on Amazon. We should have Showdown up on Amazon, but we actually nearly sold out of our first print run so fast that we haven't gotten any up on Amazon yet.
Really? Of which game?
Showdown.
Showdown. Really? That's
Showdown.
Cool.
After we fulfilled our backers, we had about 300 copies, and those went in less than 3 months.
You had 300 copies that went to backers, or 200 copies that went to backers?
About 250 copies went to backers, and then we sold about 250 copies.
Through conventions and stuff?
Yeah, just at PAX Unplugged and PAX South.
Ooh, that's cool. Good job.
Yes. The only reason we haven't reprinted it yet and got it on Amazon is because I'm waiting to do a little bit of graphic design touch up for like a 2.0.
Nice. I have a question about the reprinting. This has been going through my head a lot. So you printed 500 copies of this awesome game, Showdown, and which has cool art, and it costs, I think you said, for 500 copies, 2,000. How much was for 500 copies? 2,000.
If we got it reprinted today, the quote we got would be for about $2,000.
But the really interesting thing to me was, how much does 1,000 cost?
This specifically, we're talking about Print Ninja here.
Okay, Print Ninja is the manufacturer you're looking at. Okay.
This is the online quote that we got from them. The 1,000 copies would be $2,379. So only a $350 difference.
And that was like mind blowing to me.
It is honestly mind blowing to me too, because I'm wondering the first time we ordered it, before they had this online thing, it's like, should I have asked for that? Should I have got
Yeah.
that? But
It
yeah,
is
of
it
course,
is
shipping
really hard
is.
to kind of guess because you don't want to be stuck with 400 copies of a game that no one
Oh, absolutely
wants to
not. It
buy.
is so much like really. With the exception of right here, where it's such a huge leap, sort of a no-brainer. But like between 1,000 copies, 1,500 copies, it's not enough of a difference for you to gamble your financial security on.
That makes sense. And also like we need to talk about the shipping. So the shipping, it's $300 more to print the game, 500 more games. But it's also you still have to pay the 300 extra dollars of shipping. So in I
Well,
guess it
the
would be
shipping cost
800.
but the shipping cost doubles, which means that it stays the same per unit. And that's how you really want to look at it.
Yeah, so it's the same per unit. So you'd be paying the plus what is that like $600 for 500 more units, which is it seems really good compared to the 500 units. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the cost per unit, not counting the shipping, goes from $4 down to about 240. So,
Oh.
and that also frees you up to well, first of all, it frees you up to make a bit more or sell the game for less. And these days, the prices are going down and down because more companies are getting to that point where they can print those big runs, and they kind of, or even just really passionate first time designers who sell their stuff just to break even.
Do they?
And
Sorry.
I'm just saying it can be tough to price your games competitively. But just
I can
remember, you can
imagine.
always go down, but you can't go up. People don't like that.
That makes sense. And so, like, when you're getting a quote, do they only have 500 and then 1,000, or can you do like 600 or?
I don't know. Well, with the well, it's generally just kind of a range. So, like for example, if I wanted not, they probably would work with me on this. But let's just pretend I wanted 999 copies.
Uh huh.
They would be at the cost of 500. The same
Ah,
cost per unit. It's sort of like a price bracket.
that
So
makes
like any
sense. So 500 to 999 would
yeah,
cost X, and 1,000 to 1,500 would cost
right.
Y.
I
Okay.
mean, if you're dealing with a robot, I
Yeah.
mean, a reasonable person will work with you on that. But yeah, it's sort of arranged that way.
And so with Print Ninja, who you're looking to get it Showdown reprinted with, um, you went with them for the first printing. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're really good for tuck boxes with cards in them.
Tough
If you want
box
anything more than that,
with cards.
if you want anything more than that, then they get a bit pricey, and you're probably better off shopping around. And really, whenever you're going to be doing anything, your best bet is shopping around. Um, it might take a little while because board game manufacturers are really busy right now, but and it might take a while because they
And
kind of
why are they busy right now?
there's just so many games coming out. There's
But
just
is it the time of year or just the in
oh
general?
no. Well, all right. I found out this year that right after Chinese New Year, they are just completely swamped. Like in April,
Huh.
April is pretty much just don't even count on getting any business done.
Wow. That's good to
Yeah,
know.
yep. Because I thought, like many I'm sure do, I was like, well, we'll set it up so that we'll have everything start printing right after Chinese New Year, so that we don't have to worry about that. Because a lot of first-time Kickstarters seem to not know about it, and they lose a month and they're behind schedule.
Interesting.
But yeah, but there's just so much work being done that unless you've already got money in their hands and they're already got the stuff on the printing press, it's probably not going to get any, probably not going to move forward in April.
So I guess like one of the big takeaways for new game designers that I'm thinking about, like you have to remember that these manufacturers that make a lot of games for you, a big print run like 500 or more games, they also print things in their shop that aren't board games. So like they have, you said Chinese New Year is really busy for them. So I imagine because they're in China, they're creating all of these other products for other companies that
Well,
have nothing
I,
to do with board games.
even if they're just printing board games, I mean, there were 3,000 new board games last year alone.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How did you
They
where'd you get that stat? That's interesting.
I was looking around for it to put on a poster actually. It's between 3,000 3,500 according to BGG if you don't count expansions. I really appreciate whoever took the time to count them and put that information out there because I don't
Yeah.
have it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder how many of those are kickstarted. That would be
I don't
another
know.
cool stat.
Yeah, well, that one's not too hard because you could just check out the how many. I bet Kickstarter keeps track of that stuff more, like how many Kickstarters were launched in
I've
2017.
I've seen I've seen publishers like one of my friends, Scott Morris, who he's out of Austin. He's done some help it's like content creation on Streamlined Gaming, but he's talks about how Kickstarter has been a bit hard to kind of look at their numbers. They don't, or at least years ago, like 1 or 2 years ago, they didn't have the greatest numbers. Like it was hard to search, I guess is what I'm getting at. But I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
that's
wouldn't be
still true.
surprised if Kickstarter themselves doesn't do it quite as cut and dry, but there are so many people in the industry that really passionately follow Kickstarter stuff like that. Like I'm sure if you ask James Math or JD Stegmeyer, they'd probably know for sure. You know?
That makes sense, or at least like give it an estimate. Like there's this many each week, and then
Yeah, yeah.
like Daniel Zayas, I saw he has a blog where he talks about Kickstarters each week. I guess he's still doing it, and I looked at his blog for a couple weeks, and I was like, there are a lot of board game Kickstarter. Like he was doing top 10 of each week, and I was like, if there's a top 10 of each week, that means like and he said there's like 100 each week, which is like 52. That doesn't really add up, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot each week, and it's a huge industry, and a lot of people are worried that it's gonna burst, bubble's gonna burst, or it's just gonna like be over flooded. But I don't know. I mean,
at the same time, the average person in America like doesn't care about this industry at all. There's so many people that I've run into. They're like, "What do you mean you play board games?" And I'm like,
well,
"I don't know.
it's
I play board games."
established industry, but like how many books get published every week? How many movies get made? Including small indie flicks that never make it to a theater.
Yeah, but to
I mean,
me, like I feel like the board game industry is just kind of getting started, even though it does. I'm sure there'll be bubbles and it'll be brought back and whatnot. But
yeah, I think it's a huge wave of accessibility is going to bring a lot of people in, like it has, and then I think it's either going to continue. It's going to kind of like taper off or just stay constant. I don't think it's going to just keep exponentially growing, but I could be wrong because I'm not a economist.
yeah, I don't know either. We'll see what I don't know, like with esports being so big, I think with that growing so fast, I think a lot of people are becoming more used to nerdy stuff, or I don't know what you want to call it.
I mean, I would love to see more tabletop, like on ESPN 8 the Ocho or something like.
That would be cool.
Yeah, just something.
Yeah.
Like it's got that potential.
But I feel like the normal the people that don't play a lot of board games naturally are going to be more comfortable with video games, and then once they're comfortable with video games, then they're like, oh, there's board games that are really cool too, and then they'll play board games, and then it will be kind of commonplace for more people. I don't know. That's my guess in 10, 20 years.
There were, I don't know, several years ago, Texas Hold'em and professional poker became huge for a little bit, just because when you can see the cards that everyone's got, and you're getting commentary about the game and the flow rather than just watching people play in silence. Like I think board games have that definitely kind of potential if we can just
that
set
makes
it
a
up
lot of
so that
sense.
People can see what people are holding or what they're planning or what they're commentators making the game interesting, because that's really same with esports. I think it's really on the commentators to do that. And I'd love to see more of that in tabletop.
Yeah, that would be cool. Filming tabletop games and whatnot is tough. I think digital board games and card games do it really well, like Hearthstone, because they're set up to be able to view very well, and they are gaining a lot of traction. So maybe that's where we're going. I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
But
I do think it's kind of far from manufacturing, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, so I'm bringing it back to manufacturing. We have a question. So Justin asks, who are the people and places to contact to begin the process? So once you have a game ready to manufacture, let's say somebody just did a Kickstarter. I mean, you'll want to know this before you do a Kickstarter. But say my game is something that I'm wanting to self-publish. I did a Kickstarter. I mean, okay. When do you start talking to the manufacturers? So let's just pretend with or not even pretend. Let's talk about one of your games, Showdown. When did you start talking to manufacturers about this game?
Well, with Showdown, I mean, it's basically the same as Shootout, so I didn't really have a lot of wonder there. But
All right, so how about
even
Showdown
still,
or
well, that's the
Shootout?
thing.
I mean,
Even still with Showdown, it was several months before the Kickstarter was planned because I just wanted to be able to shop around, get quotes, compare prices, compare component qualities that were being offered and stuff, and just see what company would be the best to work with. I ended up going with Print Ninja again because it was easy, it was convenient. I was familiar with their quality,
and with
and it worked out.
Shootout, your first game, who did you contact, or how many people did you contact for that? How many companies did you contact to get quoted?
Well, that's the thing with the Shootout. I probably contacted maybe 6 companies, and 4 of them were not ones I should have contacted. Basically, like I was kind of wasting my time with contacting Panda, which is a great publisher, from what I understand, manufacturer, just on the higher end and on higher end of like component uh,
So
minimum order.
they were too much. They were the order number was too much, or like the price their quote was too
Yeah,
much, or both.
well, a little both really.
What was their minimum order?
I think the minimum is 1,500, which is pretty common for like any of the big name
Okay.
manufacturers. And then I contacted a couple U.S. manufacturers that were like, yeah, we only do things of 10,000 or more. We don't get out of bed for less than 10,000 units.
Wow.
So I
You
kind of
said that
wasted.
was in the U.S.
Yes, yeah, there's some card manufacturing companies in the U.S. I don't have their names to heart since they're not practical, but
That makes sense. Wow, I hadn't heard of the 10,000 minimum. That is a lot.
yeah, yep.
So let's see. So you contact that many people, 6 people. You get quotes, then you narrow it down to basically 2 of them. It sounds like.
Well,
And
yeah, I got a couple quotes that were actually like practical, and yet honestly, at the end of the day, I went with the one that was cheaper, and it's really just you got to look at their reputation. You have to look at what they're known for. Like James Math has a really good article. I think it's called "The Hitchhiker's Guide to Manufacturers." That's got a huge list of manufacturers with what they're good at, what their prices are like, what their minimum order quantity is,
cool.
and
I'll
that's
have
a
to.
really good resource to start with.
I'm gonna make a note to.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have. Let's see. We have another question. Oh, this is interesting. So Zachary asks about the copyright process, and we're talking about for your when you publish your game,
Mm-hmm.
because real quick before you publish your game, when it's just a prototype, the average, the common answer in our industry is you don't need to get it copyrighted. You talking about your game and showing off your game and all that stuff is basically copywriting it. But I don't know once you publish your game if there's certain things that you need to copyright or trademark, or do you know about that stuff? Or
Yeah,
what's your
yeah. I
thought
mean,
on it? We're
the
not
the
lawyers, obviously, but
yeah, the short answer is it doesn't matter because no one's allowed to use your artwork, no one's allowed to copy your rule book word for word. Um, but the way games are protected legally is someone else could make basically the same game with different artwork and differently worded rules and publish it.
I have a
Which
interesting question that kind of goes to what you're talking about. So, Magic the Gathering, they somehow like copyrighted or trademarked mana, or or tap, or like they
yeah,
copyrighted some of their keywords.
right.
What's the deal with that?
Well, the deal with that is that they're a wealthy corporation with that are basically above the standard law as you or I would understand it. So
Okay.
they're able to get away with saying that they own certain concepts, such as the idea of tapping cards or the tap symbol, for example. I mean, the symbol again, you could argue its graphic design is theirs, but uh, and with Magic, they at least can kind of see where they're coming from because with their keywords and everything, it's part of their brand by this point, and their brand is so large that there could be a hole that imitators or knockoffs would want to fill. So
That makes
I
sense.
think, yeah. but for the most part, and like, there's really nothing about your game. Like, just by making it, you own it. No one else can use the name of your game. No one else can use your artwork. Um, and I mean, that's pretty much as good as it's gonna get,
Yeah, pretty much.
unless you
I
have a
brought up
reason.
the. Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done.
I was just saying, if you have really, unless you really have like a reason to think that you have like a jaded partner out there who's gonna try and jump in, you really don't need to worry about it too much.
That makes sense. I brought up the Magic the Gathering cards. I know Zachary plays some Magic the Gathering. We've talked about that before, and it's just like I know they've done it with some of their keywords, but in general, what I've read and what I've seen other people say, other game designers, published game designers, and whatnot, and they all say the same thing. And it's like copyright. It's pretty much you just don't do it. I mean, like
I
what
mean,
Chris said, once you have the game, once you post, like I've been posting pictures of my game and my idea and what it's about, and so that technically copyrights it in the sense. But I mean, someone could still steal my idea, I guess. I don't know what I would do if that happened. It's like, but in general, an idea is an idea, and it's usually all about the execution, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. I mean, no one's, and chances are, even if someone stole your idea, they wouldn't steal your exact cards and just copy the effects word for word, which means you wouldn't really have a case for them just copying your rules mechanics.
That makes sense.
Copyright mechanics. But yeah, I mean, another thing is like with copywriting sort of keywords or like game concepts. Why would you want to? What benefit do you get from that as a small publisher?
Yeah. One of the things that fascinates me about this topic is I'll make a prototype, and at first it was really annoying. Well, annoying might not even be the right word. It was really a big turnoff. Like I'd make a game, and then it would have some mechanics that were inspired by other games, and there's always, this is just fascinating to me. There's always these people, whether it be my friends or just play testers I was getting, and they would, anytime I'd talk about my game, they'd be like, "Oh, that game's already been made. Oh, that's already been made." I'm like, "You don't know anything about my game yet. Like, I'm just telling you about it." So I just wanted to point that out for new game designers. Like, if you're getting pushback on, "Oh, that game's already been made. You don't need to make that. Somebody will sue you for making that game." It's like, unless it's an exact copy and you're copying the rule book, and if it has some ideas from this game, some ideas from that game, that's what pretty much all games are. So don't listen to that.
And when I get that, I write down, if I can't memorize it, I'll write down whatever the name of the game that they said it reminds them of, and I'll always go look it up because, for one, I have such a limited amount of time. If someone else really has already done what I've done, then I don't want to really waste my time on doing it. But secondly, I can see what it is, and I can decide, well, do I think I can do this better? Do I think mine is different in a fundamental way? What do I bring to this that makes it different? Because if it's the same thing, I'll just go out and buy that game. I don't have to make a new one.
Yeah, that's actually really a good idea. Like just going to look and seeing that game. I mean, if anything else, playing that game will probably give you more inspiration for your own game. And if it is, I don't know why it would be, but if it is like an exact copy, like, oh, okay, I guess I need to change up my game a little bit. But that's like so unlikely.
Of the time, people have told me that this game reminds me of this. There's either the most minor superficial similarity or just bad. Sometimes it's baffling. You're like, is it because of the? Like, what is it? Why did they say that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some play testers, how that they'll pretend to know everything about your game, and we haven't even gotten past turn one, and I'm like, how do you haven't even played the game yet?
And it's just human nature to compare anything to whatever.
That's true. Very true.
It's pure human nature, plain simple.
And by the way, I love all of my playtesters. Anyone that will playtest my game, I'm like, thank you so much. So it's not about like bashing on them, but as a game designer, it is definitely something that at first I was like, oh, crud, should I not make this game anymore? Because it has kind of a resemblance of another game.
And there are so many games out these days, too. It's like, even if it is like one game, it's like one of the other 3,000 games that came out.
Yeah,
exactly. Did everyone play that game? I imagine only some people did, statistically.
Yeah.
still serve the same market with the second game because there'll be some people like the first one more, some people like the second one more, but they might like both.
That's very true. So that's pretty much that's all the questions that I had from the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram audience. Well, actually, let me check my Instagram audience. Maybe somebody's asked there, but um, I do have one. Well, I have one more question. It's not related to manufacturing so much, but it is an interesting question, so we can talk about it. It was Barnaby asked, "How do you get your how do you get game companies to look at your designs?" So as a solo designer, if you're wanting to publish through a traditional publisher, I mean, do you have experience with this? How have you pitched to publishers, or what have you done? Do you just do the design contests, or
Well,
how
I
do you
mean, I
normally do
actually,
this?
pretty notably, we pitched similarly. We pitched some of our games to Target earlier this year for a partnership, and we went to New York to do that. I keep saying we, I did, me,
So
but
you said this
huh?
was at Toy Fair.
Yes, this was at New York Toy Fair.
How did that go?
Well, it was neat, but I don't want to get too much into that and away from the question. So I mean, but there was a
Or well, I
online.
mean, I think it relates to it. Like how did you go about trying to pitch to the publishers and stuff? Because
Well, there was
she's asking how do you get game companies to look at your designs?
right, and so for Target, in Target's case, there was an online call for. They were looking for games to add to their exclusive line, which I submitted a couple of our titles for. They were accepted for the interview. They're not going to be on Target shelves, but they at least got that far.
That's
And
good.
yeah, for more like so for any like huge company, you kind of have to go to them. And the best way to do that would be like go to GenCon or Origins. There's usually a publisher speed dating event, which is a great way to get your game in front of publishers, or just any convention that's near you that has publishers. Go talk to them, give them a business card, especially if you like have a publisher you really want to talk to. Email them in advance. Try and set up a meeting. It's really all about setting up a. You want to try and set up a face-to-face meeting with a publisher at a convention
Cool.
or
And
do an
just
event
a quick
design.
side note, if you don't have this set up beforehand, it's actually a big turnoff to publishers if you try to set it up at the convention because they're super busy. They're trying to sell their own games. In general, this is the advice I've heard from publishers. Like,
I think the thing is, don't come up to them with your prototypes in your hands like, hey, I want to show you this right now. Come up to them, introduce yourself, get a business card, ask them if they have any time this weekend. Just real quick, like a 5 minute. This is networking. I'm also going to ask you if you're free at any point this weekend. If not, that's cool. That's
cool.
how I handled it with Dice Hate Me games when I first met Chris Kirkman there. He was great, very nice guy.
Very nice. Um, and so publisher speed dating, which is basically a bunch of publishers in a room. Game designers come in, pitch their idea, 5-10 minutes, I'm guessing, and then they go to the next publisher. Is that kind of how that works?
I think it's kind of the other way around. The publishers are the ones that rotate. The games are set up, and they
Oh,
do a little. Yeah, you'll
that's
set up your
interesting.
game. You'll show each publisher, and they'll ask questions or just you know.
That makes more sense because that way the publishers could probably see the sell sheets beforehand and see which games they would be interested in and go talk to them. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I haven't
I've
done
never
anything
been to
like.
one.
Yeah, but I'm going to one or a similar event that there's going to be at GenCon this year. I'm on the list for that. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, you have to.
yeah.
We'll have to talk about how that goes because I've heard about them. I've never actually been to one. Well, very nice. And then you can always just reach out to publishers. Look up the publisher online. See what usually the publishers should have a list of the game types they're looking for and what age group and whatnot. So
Or
you
if they're
look at all that and what.
yeah, or it should say whether or not they're accepting submissions.
So yeah, if they're make sure they're accepting submissions, and then if they are, then make sure that what they're looking for matches the game type you have, so that you
Yeah,
don't waste your time, you don't waste their time. And then
yeah,
if they match, then say, hey, I have a game that is for kids, and it's a deck building game for kids that I see you're looking for. Would you like to play test it?
try and send them a short, comprehensive email with maybe a couple pictures and just to give them a good idea of what your game is, so that they can decide whether or not they want to, arrange something. Because either way, you're going to have to arrange some kind of play test or demo or online thing to get a publisher interested. And they do take a while, from what I understand. I have a friend, Mike Abrahamson. He's trying to get his first game published. It's a really great game, but sometimes they can take up to 6 months to get back to you, and it hurts and it's not fun. But
they're really busy, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Just like the printers and the manufacturers, they have times in their year that are just full of them trying to sell their games and release their games.
Everybody, I think.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much, Chris. We'll have to do more of these. It was interesting. I learned a whole lot.
I always love talking about this stuff.
As I make my game, I mean, I've been making games for 9 years or however many years. I don't even know. I mean, I've been making games since I was like 8, but trying to publish one for about 8 years. And just now, a month or two ago, I started making my latest version of Meatballs Monsters, which is a game, 2-player tower defense game where I'm trying to, based off of my grandma's stories, and I'm trying to, like, if this is a game that is fun enough to publish and I get to that stage, I want to be ready for that. Like, how do I manufacture? How do I distribute this game? Whatnot. Yeah. So it's good to be able to catch up with you and pick your brain, so to speak, and see what you've done.
I'm happy to be able to help because, like, this is all information that I've gleaned from hours and hours and hours and hours of reading articles and asking questions and just trying to find all this stuff out. And the resources, there's some resources out there, but trying to get an amalgamation of all that information is tough. So I'm glad that I can, if anything, I can, just give the cliff notes on. I'm happy to help.
It definitely, I know it will save me time, and I'm very appreciative. I mean, hopefully one day I make a game that's good enough to publish. So I got to get that far first.
People to work on their games too, because like once you get the first one out, it's a lot easier.
Oh, I bet. Well, cool. Yeah, we'll have to do this again. And I want to hear about the publisher speed dating when you do that at Gen Con this year.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be just about 1 month from now.
Awesome. Well, thanks. This is Calvin for Streamlined Gaming, and with Chris Amburn of New Experience Workshop. Thanks for watching. Ask any questions that you have after watching this video. Maybe you have follow-up questions. We'll be happy to answer, or maybe even make another video and talk about them. So.
Yeah, and if you want to follow New Experience Workshop or ask me anything, both Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, it's all New Games page.
New Games page. Cool. I can link those as well.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.